actively, and a lot of the guys are MIA, and it's heartbreaking.
Yeah, and that's a common denominator right there, Chris. Yeah, I mean, John's 100% on the money with the suicide rate spiking during this period of time, but just in general, all in all, calls to helplines and just, calls to each other. Every call that I have just about from my fellow vets is a vet that's suffering just as much as I am or more, usually more. I consider myself as doing pretty well, in comparison.
Cool, man. And obviously I met Javi when I first went out to Bend, and we've been texting back and forth, just making sure everybody's good, and we kind of been keeping up with some people from Bend and everything. And honestly, Bend took me out of my isolation hard, and I've been getting out more with my family and everything, and I'm able to talk to people a little bit more. This whole pandemic's kind of affected me in a pretty bad way. I was telling some other people, my mom almost died from it. And, that was difficult. It was when we were all shut down, and there was box trucks with ice at all the local hospitals because they're peeling off so many bodies. But it's a crazy world we're living in, and it's important to police each other up.
No, you were talking to me about your mom. So, yeah, I mean, we have a great network now that you've tapped into with the buddy system that we have set up to keep track and Ben was special. I mean, we knew, in talking with the guys when we had some of our guys end up in the hospital, that we had to try to figure out how to do in-person things. So that's what we're doing. Hopefully I'm sure we're going to have a big group again for the retreat in Long Beach. We have a really good setup there. It should be nice and good. It's a brand new place, so we're going to be the first group to stay there. And I think we're the only group in there, right?
Yeah, it was completely remodeled and opened in July, and they haven't really had anyone stay there. Maybe onesies or twosies, but really no group. We're the first group, and they're so excited because most of their revenue derives from conventions, and the convention is closed. So we're it, and they are raring to go. So if anybody wants to join for the week, I can put the link in the chat, and then if you want to join us for the ride on that Saturday, I'll put that in the chat as well. But the more the merrier, and I think it's going to be a really great event. A lot of good things in store. A lot of good partners coming out. BJ's Restaurant is going to be coming out, and we have quite a few others that are going to be joining us.
It's going to be great, and we'll have our on our call on Thursday, our little happy hour, our own inner circle call. We'll talk more about the event in LA and all the protocols and everything. So answer any questions people have. I'd like to get started now. Welcome to our Voice Project Town Hall. The promise of America is great. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It takes hard work, sacrifice, and accountability. Although we have not always lived up to the promise for some, we're going to walk a mile in someone's shoes as we discuss how to strengthen and improve our community. And just remember that we have people with diverse and broad opinions. Some of the stuff you will hear today you will not agree with. Some of it you may agree with, but just remember we're here to listen. As we always say, God provided 2 ears and 1 mouth. Please use proportionally. We are here to learn, to listen, to provide positive solutions, and find common ground and understanding of our differences. Even though we don't need to agree on everything, we need to show respect for one another and recognizing our differences. And so Just remember that all of us are here with endowed by our Creator with unalienable rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And just remember, if we disagree, your unalienable rights do not supersede mine. Just remember, we'll go probably till 7 Eastern, 4 Pacific. Please mute yourself unless you're called upon by the moderators. All speakers, please try to keep your remarks to a minute or so we can allow for the most interaction and questions. If you have any comments or questions, please type them into the chat box, and we usually get to most of those. Remember, this is a non-political event. We don't care who you're voting for president. We just want to have a positive, respectful dialogue on how to improve our communities, starting with how to show each other kindness and respect, especially with those we don't know, don't look like, or don't agree with. And if for some reason you can't follow those simple guidelines, we'll ask or we will remove you from the discussion. And with that, I'm going to proudly introduce Aaron Pellegrino from RISE, our great partners. We've been working with them on a number of town halls during the COVID era. We got a few more coming up. And we're always excited to look at how sports and athletes and veterans hold a special place in our communities, and we can use that as a way to create dialogue like we're having today. And with that, I'll turn it over to Aaron.
Thanks, John, and thanks, everyone. It's a real privilege to be here. As John said, this is our, I think, third town hall in the last few months that RISE has been able to contribute with the Voice Project. RISE, our mission is to use sports to improve race relations. There's a lot of different ways that we do that, but education is really the center of our universe, trying to make sure that we get out and empower athletes and the entire sports community to really drive change. And we recognize that a big part of that is police and community relations, first responders relationships with the communities, and what an important role you all play in that. Coming from a military family myself and working at RISE for the last 5 years, I really believe that it's entirely possible to be patriotic and pro-military and still want equal rights and social justice. So I'm really thrilled to be here with you all and be able to continue working towards that. And it's an honor to turn it over to my colleague, Dr. McIntosh, who will take us through the program today.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Aaron. Again, just want to echo our pleasure to be here to partner with The Voice. John, gotten to know you over the past couple of months, and this has really been good dialogue, good discussion, and a really great forum and a platform, in order for us to bring our society together. These conversations that we have and we facilitate at RISE are important ones, and just really excited that John, you and your organization have been doing similar work. I know that today we really wanted to lean into the topic of identity and what that means. I have a little bit of an activity prepared, as I typically do. That's kind of how we approach our conversations. But I wanted to start by, just defining the term identity. So, if folks don't mind, you can throw things in the chat or you can unmute yourselves and share. But how would you define identity?
Lee, you want to start us off?
Yes, if I'm able to, that's fine. I think that as far as answering that question, I think that identity is the greatest gift for every human being on the planet. So I define it as the greatest gift, because every person, no matter where you come from, no matter what nationality you are, no matter where you come, where you are in life, you choose who you are. So identity is a choice.
Okay.
Now some people make it something else, but I think that's simple.
Thanks a lot, Lee. So what I'm taking away from you, hey, one, identity is a gift. Two, it's also a choice.
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, let me hear from a couple others. How
David?
would you define identity?
Hi. So I just wanted to comment. First of all, Lee, hi, good to see you.
Hey.
Okay. And so I think that I agree with everything that Lee is saying. I think it becomes harder though, especially for younger people, to form an identity, because the initial places where we find our identity are both in addition to our parents, or from our society, from our culture, from the things which we find as a united, existence that we can believe in. And when we live in a really divisive nation, and we live in divisive times when people are attacking each other for petty things, and also attacking each other for meaningful things, I think it becomes hard to figure out, who you really are. I also think that social media contributes to that. We live in a culture where as soon as I respond to something on social media, they're now sending me constantly advertisements and encouragement to kind of make that my identity, even if it's something that I don't want to really identify with. And again, I think that as someone who is a little bit older, a little more experienced, maybe born just before, all that came into existence, it's easier for me than for people who grew up perhaps believing that whatever identity is found for them on social media, whatever category, they're placed in, or online group that, that invited them in, that's what they're supposed to believe, and that's who they are. And of course, that's not true. Of course, that's some kind of a false identity that's thrust upon them. But I think that, when we're younger, it's easy for us to find, it's hard for us to find our identities. And I think that it takes a lot of work, and it's easy to grasp for an identity that people, if there's 1,000 forces on social media telling you this is what you identify with because it's going to help us advertise and help us make money. I think it's easy for people to start saying, well, maybe that is my identity. Maybe I am, I don't know, a fan of whatever, whatever program or whatever cereal box or whatever Coca-Cola advertisement that they're trying to thrust on me, when we live in a place where it's so much more difficult, I think, to kind of just be individual.
Yeah, David, what I hear you saying is that, while identity is particularly important, and we may have a choice, I hear you saying that, hey, that choice isn't always as clear-cut, or isn't always as simple or as easy. Is that accurate?
Sure. And I also think there are actual forces, particularly from online forces, trying to take that decision away from us.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Let me hear from one other person. What is identity?
This is Colonel Hensley, the Junior ROTC coordinator for LA Unified. Junior ROTC spends a lot of time on this topic of identity. We do a lot of self-awareness assessments, personality testing through the winning colors. For example, red is the tiger, adventurer. Blue is the dolphin, which is the relator. Green is the fox, which is the planner. And brown is the bear, which is the builder. So they get a feel for what type of individual they are, and they might even be split between an adventurer and a planner or a builder or a relator. And then they spend time on their personal growth plan and their personal skills map, and they do an assessment of time management, empathy, self-esteem, self-confidence, and that helps shape them, and they start to discover who they are. And then when we break them into groups in a differentiated classroom environment, they are now in a diverse group. Instead of having all the adventurers together, we have a split of adventurers, planners, builders, and relators, and then they share their strengths and weaknesses together, and they do much better in group breakout sessions. And I'll let the cadets talk about this because we do spend a lot of time about on this topic of identity.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. Thanks for sharing. So a couple of things you shared, is one, it sounds as though identity can be shaped. It sounds like identity is not static. It's something that can change. It can be nurtured. It can be fluid and be molded over time. And so, while I think to Lee's original point, we do have some choice or some say in how we might identify, I think it's also accurate to say that there are forces that kind of push on how we might identify, which then lead us to where we are. So if we kind of use what I would call a sociological or a psychological definition of identity, identity is how I see myself, how I view myself, but it's also a little bit around how others might view me. And those two things are constantly kind of going and interacting with each other, creating these shifts and that fluidity. So if we use that as a working definition, then how I view myself and how others view me, if we use that as a definition of identity, what I want to do is walk us through a little bit of an activity, which is, fairly engaging, fairly fun, and I think fairly illustrative of the breadth that identity can take on. So I'll ask everyone just to, grab a sheet of paper, have some sort of writing implement, so a pencil, a pen, whatever it may be. And I'm going to give you a task. I'm going to give you 5 minutes to do this. Give you 5 minutes to do this task. I'd like you to come up with 10 words or labels to identify yourself. So, let's say you met me for the first time, and many of you have. So this is a pretty easy exercise because you met me for the first time today. What are the top 10 words you would use to define or identify yourself? So you're saying to Andrew, hey, Andrew, I am this, this, this. So I'll give you some examples. If Andrew was identifying himself, he'd say, hey, I'm tall. He'd say he's good looking. He'd say he is black. Those are 3 words that he would use. Look, John is throwing some in there as well. Tall, athletic. Great. Yeah, those are all great examples. So I give you 5 minutes. I know some of you will need less than that. Some of you may need a little bit more. But let's see where we land in about 5 minutes. 10 words that you would use to describe yourself. Let's list them off from 1 at the top of your sheet to 10. So 1 to 10. What are the 10 words you'd use to describe yourself? John, if you don't mind, just keep them to yourself for now.
I'm just trying to help people,
Got it. No problem then. That's fine. You can give them some ideas. No problem. As people are doing that and coming up with their words, I also want you to begin thinking about why you use those words to identify yourself. So, if you said you were tall, you said you were athletic, funny, whatever the case might be, why do you have that word? Why would you use that word to describe yourself? So think about 10 words you'd use to describe yourself, but also think about why you would use those words to describe yourself.
I just put it in the chat box too, Andrew, because we have people joining in as they come in. So
great. Thanks a lot, John. Appreciate it. Give folks about a minute to wrap up, a minute to wrap up. So again, coming up with the 10 words you would use to describe yourself, and you're thinking about why you would use those words to describe yourself. And what we'll do in about 60 seconds or so is have a little bit of a conversation. I'll ask a couple of folks to share one or two of their words, and to share as well why they use those words. So, we're going to ask a couple of folks to share out, what are one or two of the words that they have to describe themselves, and why. About 45 seconds, and then we go.
Before we do that, real quick, Admiral Kibben, I wanted to make sure that you met Pastor Cedric Nelms he's from the South Central LA area, and he'll be joining us in our event in LA in November. And Cedric?
Hey, Cedric, great to meet you. I saw your name show up as short, black, husky, and visionary. So good to get to know you a little bit.
Thank you. Good to meet you too. Looking forward to meeting you face to face.
I sure hope that happens. Thank you.
And Cedric, just so you know, Admiral Kibben was the chief of chaplains for the Department of Navy, and she was the first female chief of chaplains in U.S. military history, I believe.
No, that's not quite. The first female chief of chaplains in the Navy.
In the Navy.
The Air Force beat us by 10 years. It's the one thing that they have beat us at, and football last weekend.
all the important things.
Awesome.
Well, the Army's in second place in football.
For now.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. For now, yeah.
All right. Before we dive too heavily into football, let me just try to stay us back here. So as we think about our identities, I asked you to come up with 10 words you'd use to describe yourself. Let's have a couple of folks share. Let's about four or so folks share one word you use and why you use that word to describe yourself. I'm happy to call on folks if we prefer that, John, but I'm also happy to just let folks volunteer. So, what's your preference?
I was gonna have some of the kids start us off, if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, so one word and why.
So Arturo, you want to start us off?
Sure, why not? For my word, I wrote decisive. I wrote that word because it's something that I've learned from experience in JROTC, and I think that describes how I've grown as a person.
Excellent. Thanks a lot, Arturo. So kind of as we've been saying, we kind of said this as we defined identity. Part of our identities are things that we become, right? Things that we learn, there's skill sets that we possess, etc. And I think, decisive kind of sums that up nicely. Someone else?
Emily?
As my word, I put short. I chose that word because it's one of the first things people notice when they see me.
Excellent. Thanks a lot, Emily. And again, as we think about identity can be things that people do not see. So if we think about decisiveness, that's not something that is visibly apparent if I were to see you. But to Emily's point, I might see somebody's physical stature. And so, we might identify in that way because that's a way others might describe us, or we identify in that way because relative to others, it kind of makes sense. Let's have a couple more folks share.
Fadi, you want to share with us?
Humble human being. Simple as that.
Humble human being. So that's one or two?
One.
Okay. All right. Great. So again, if we think about the humility part, that's something that we may not see, but human being definitely is something that we can see. So again, I think in how you kind of label yourself, we have both components as well. Let's have one more person share.
This is Colonel Hensley. Most people would identify me as the Colonel, but I identify myself as a fly fisherman. It's something that is part of my core. It's part of my character. It's therapeutic, and it relaxes me. And it's something that nobody would know about me unless they really knew me personally. I mean, it's fly fishermen.
Yeah, again, to your point, I really, like that you emphasize that while a lot of people might identify you in one way, if you had to identify yourself, you'd probably go in another direction, and it's probably a part of yourself that a lot of people don't know, but it is, influential across a number of contexts, and holds a really significant part of your life. So, as we think about our identities, and many of you, I think, would have come up with more than one way to identify yourself. I saw some people threw some of theirs into the chat. One of the things that we really like to emphasize in these discussions is that we are multifaceted individuals. So if we think about identity, we are not one thing. Nobody, typically describes themselves as just brave or just humble or just determined or just short or just decisive. And I don't define myself as just good looking. You know what I mean? So there are lots of other ways in which I define myself. And so it's important, I think, to emphasize, especially as we have discussions around things like racism, things like social justice, things like, identity, racism, etc., that to label someone and put them in a box for just one thing or one part of their identity is going to be problematic, because, no one identifies themselves as just one thing. So that's the first point, this takeaway that I wanted to kind of get across. The second question I have for you, so this is a question for folks. Let me hear from some few folks that I haven't heard from yet. Do you think that your set of 10 words would be the exact same as anyone else's here? So do you think your set of 10 words would be the exact same as anyone else's here?
Suzette, can you answer that?
Yes, I can.
How would you answer that question?
I don't think my list would be like anyone else's, because I feel like we're all different in our own ways.
Yeah, excellent. I agree with you wholeheartedly, Suzette, and I know I see some folks in the chat responding as well, agreeing with you that no, your set of 10 wouldn't be the exact same. So, again, as we think about things like diversity, and diversity simply means different, right? So, we can be different in different ways. We can have things like racial diversity, we could have things like gender diversity, we could have diversity of skin color, of height, of nationality, of musical preferences. There are lots of things that we could be diverse around. So if diversity is simply difference, then, each and every single one of us is different from one another. We aren't all the same. And so no one set of 10 labels, or however many labels, really define someone's identity, whether it's 100 or 1,000 or 2,000, is going to be exactly the same, because we are, each and every single one of us, different from one another. So it's okay then for us to talk about diversity, to talk about what makes us stand out, what sets us apart, what makes us unique, because that is simply a fact of life. We are not all exactly the same. How many people, either looking in the chat or hearing some of the discussion we've had so far, has seen or heard a word that they also chose for themselves? So, I know some people said decisive, some people said determined, smart, helpful. How many people have seen or heard a word that they have shared already? Let me have 3 people kind of share if they've seen one they heard already, and which ones. I see friend in the chat. I see smart. Yeah. Determined, short. Great. Petite. Yeah, excellent. So, the third point here is that as we think about identity, there are things that set us apart, things that make us unique, things that make us stand out, that we want to hold on to and say, hey, I am different. But there are also tons of things that we have in common. There are things that we hold similar. So John and I both describe ourselves as athletic, for example. And those are the things that we need to hold on to that bring us together. Those are the things that allow us to form teams. Those are the things that allow us to form units, allow us to form community and family. allow us to build society and nations. And so, one of the things that I think is really important as we think and have conversations around diversity is to view diversity as a two-sided coin. There are lots of ways in which we might be different, things that make us stand out and make us unique. But there are simultaneously lots of ways in which we are similar. And so these types of discussions around identity, allowing us to reflect on both our similarities and differences is truly important. Let me ask folks to do this now. So I want you to look through your set of 10 words. Look through your set of 10 words, and I want you to give up an identity. Pick one of those identities which you can no longer use to define or describe you. You need to get rid of it. You're going to draw a line, scratch it out, erase it. It no longer exists. I'll give you 60 seconds. Sorry, Admiral. And when you finish doing that, I want you to say which one you gave up. So you're going to reflect on this for a little while, and then I'll ask a couple of folks to share. So you're thinking about which one you gave up. I'll never give that one up, John. Which one you gave up?
That's why I put that there, because BJ said I was funny. So
which one you gave up? Why did you give up that one? And how did it make you feel? So I want people to consider for a little bit. Which one did you give up? Why did you pick that one? Because I didn't tell you which one to pick. So why did you pick the one that you picked to give up? And how did it make you feel? Take about 60 seconds to reflect on that, and then let's have a couple people share again. So which one did you give up? Why did you pick that one? How did it make you feel? Giving folks about 20 more seconds to reflect on which ones they gave up and why, and also a little bit about how it made them feel. And let's have 2 or 3 people share again. Let's have 2 or 3 people share again. I know you're throwing things in the chat, Renata. Do you mind kicking us off and just kind of sharing audibly, like which one you gave up?
I gave up vertically challenged, as I put it. I don't identify truly with that, although everyone might see that about me. I don't really care whether short, tall. I don't think that really matters to me what that is in a person. I believe really what constitutes and what makes up a person is more important. So I'd rather identify myself as optimistic or compassionate or something else other than my height. So that's why.
Yeah, thanks a lot. So what I hear you saying, just, correct me if I'm wrong, I want to make sure I capture this well. It's, hey, others might view me that way, but I don't. So that's one of the things I hear you saying. But I also hear you saying that, hey, I accept that I might be, more vertically challenged than others. I want to make sure I put it in your own words. But there are things to me that are a little bit more important and a little bit more core and central to who I am and to whom others are as well. And so I hold on to those things versus the more physical things. Is that accurate?
Yep. Exactly.
Beautiful. Like, thank you. Let me hear from 2 more persons. Which one did you give up and why?
Ginger, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Which one did you give up?
I gave up petite, kind of like Renata. I thought, all the other things kind of described my heart. So I can't give up something that describes my heart because that's more of who I am. My body can change.
Got it. Thanks a lot, Ginger. Let me have 1 more person.
I'd like to hear from Lee.
You want to know what I gave up?
Yes, please.
I gave up my false identity.
Say more.
Well, I mean, and I can say it in a short time. At one point, my identity was my reputation. Being a football player, that ended after 7 years. Before that, pretty much my identity was my nationality. You know, I'm Black or African American, pertaining to the connotation of it. I mean, there's different type of Blacks. You know, like there's a fearful Black, there's a bougie Black, there's I want to be white Black. I mean, there's different kind of Black. So I gave up all those identities in search of my true identity, and you know, but those identities that I gave up are still part of who I am. You know, I'm chocolate, I'm African American, I'm Black. I mean, it's a part of who I am. At the platform of a former professional football player legend, that's a part of my identity, but it's not the power source that I'm plugged into. It's not the foundation, it's the basic identity. If identity is both a noun and a verb, when I choose the noun of who I am, the person, my persona, the place, my mind, my heart, and the thing, my character, that's a part. The next part is the verb part. I began to act upon it. I become it. It's a part of the process, and I continue to recreate who I am throughout my life. So I gave up the false identity, and how did I do that? I mainly recognized there's an identity. There's identity theft. You know, just like somebody steals your credit card and your identity and charge you money on your credit card. You want to make sure you take care of that identity theft. And so that's what I did. I said, I wanted to make sure, you know what, I'm not being somebody who I'm not.
Thanks a lot, Lee. So again, you know, based on what you're sharing there, I think, you know, you're reiterating a couple of things that we've expressed. So one is identity is fluid. One is identity is multifaceted. You talked about identity or previous identities still being a part of you. But one of the things that I also think is really powerful in what you're saying is that, you know, ultimately we have some control over how we identify, right? How we identify ourselves. So there are sources of and inputs from others, but we ultimately have a choice, and we can, what the psychologists would call, cognitively reframe all of those inputs, etc., that are coming at us. Okay, great. Let me challenge people one more time. Look through your set, however many you came up with. I know some of us came up with less than 10. So however many you came up with, get rid of all except one. So give up all of your identities except one. I give you 90 seconds. Give up all of your identities except one. I'm curious what the Admiral is going to tell me now.
I'm going to introduce someone, Andrew, to kick us off on this one.
Sure. Let's just give folks about 60 more seconds. So give up all of your identities except one. And as you do that, the question for you this time is, which one did you keep? And why is that the best word to describe you? So which one did you keep? Why is it the best word to describe you? Ready to go when you are, John.
Okay, so I want to introduce to the group Reagan Coleman. She was involved in one of our town halls about a month and a half ago. She's from Daphne, Alabama, and I'm really happy that she was able to join us today on this one. And so Reagan, I'd like to start with you if you don't mind.
Hey everyone, I'm Reagan. I'm sitting here trying to figure out which one I would give up. This is real hard.
So what one word would you want to keep? Instead of what you're giving up, what's the one word?
I mean, not give up. Yeah, keep. That's what I meant to say. I'm sorry.
If you don't mind me asking, Reagan, what makes it hard?
Because so I'm thinking about either strong-willed or smart, but I understand that sometimes being strong-willed isn't always the best trait because it kind of makes it seem like you're unteachable or, I don't know, too rigid in your thinking. And I really take pride in being intelligent. So I don't know.
Okay, no problem. I appreciate the honesty and the sharing there. I hear you saying, hey, one of these traits you like, but it might be great in one context, but maybe not so great in another. And simultaneously being smart or intelligent is something that you see as more universal.
Yes,
so definitely appreciate that. Let's have two more people share. Which one did you remain with, and why?
Enrique, are you there?
Let me ask Javier if he doesn't mind. Javier, do you mind sharing?
Not at all. I appreciate it. Thank you. Like Renata, I mean, I really don't identify with my physical features. I'm a small guy, so I actually had a difficult time just deleting words. But if I were to just delete them all and be left with one, it would be fighter, because that describes me, I think, physically and spiritually. And I think that's what has helped me get through my experiences in life, as being a fighter. And that is completely different than being a warrior. Like, when I was in the military, I identified as a warrior. But now I think fighter really just describes me in a nutshell. And it's really what I would identify as if I had to just break it all down. What will keep me alive? And that's the fact that I'm a fighter.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Javier. Admiral, do you mind if I put you on the spot? Tell me, which one maybe you ended up with, or perhaps why it was difficult for you to pick one.
I don't mind you calling on me at all. The option of taking one away, as I said in the chat, would cause me great grief. The attributes that I had laid out there are me. They're just me, and to lose that would be to lose part of me. But what I was left with was to be a child of God, and if everything else is gone, to know that I'm still loved and held by the divine would be everything that I would need. It wouldn't be everything that I want, but it's everything that I need.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, I think you touched on 2 points that I think are really critical. One is the words that we hold on to are often the core of who we are. So things like religion tend to be the types of words people hold on to there. So people say faith, people say child of God, religious, etc., Christian, or whatever the faith they might have. So those are the words that typically people end up with, or they end up with a pretty central relationship. So people talk about being a father, or a mother, a parent, etc. So our identities, the ones that we remain with, tend to be those kind of core traits or values, things that are deeply held, deep-seated. Javier talked about being a fighter, and that, making reference to both his physical, psychological, emotional attributes. So that's the first thing I think, Admiral, that you shared and illustrated really well. The second part of it is, and I think Reagan touched on this a little bit as well, is, it can be difficult sometimes to pick just one or to give up one or two, as the case might be. Because again, as we said, in the first round of this, we are multifaceted individuals. We aren't just one thing. And even if we have some more core, deep-seated beliefs or labels for ourselves, we embrace all of them. And so it can be challenging to have to give one up. But I'll simultaneously kind of share that I do think some people do go through life having to make some of those choices, whether it's intentional or not. They do have to choose one identity versus another one, etc. So, what I challenge us to do as we interact with others is to interact with them in a way that allows them to be their full set of 10 or 12 or 15, again, however many labels we have that we use to identify ourselves. Because it can be difficult for people to go through life and not be able to have all of their identities. I'll pause there, see if there are any questions, and then I want to make one last point, and then I'll pass it back to John. Okay, so the last point is this, and I think there's someone else who illustrated it. I think it might have been Renata, so forgive me for not remembering this clearly. So there are two types of diversity. The first is surface diversity. So I can look at people and see things about them and differences about them. I can see who's black, I can see who's white, who's tall, who's short, male and female, right? So there's surface diversity, things I can see on the surface just by looking at you. And there's deep diversity, things that I would not see just by looking at you. What I'd like everyone to do for me is to take a look at the word that they remained with and see whether it's a surface word, something I could tell just by looking at you, or whether it's a deep word, something that I'd need to know you or have a conversation with you to find out. And just throw it in the chat for me. So if it's a deep word, just put deep in the chat. If it's a surface word, put surface in the chat. Let me just see what comes up here. So again, surface diversity, if I looked at you, I can tell. Deep diversity, I'd have to know you or have a conversation to come up with it. And if I do a quick glance at what's in the chat thus far, most people have come up with deep diversity words. And as we do this activity and have these conversations, about 95% of people end up with deep diversity words. And again, I think it's Renata who made this point. And that is this. For most of us, if we had to be known for one thing, we had to pick one thing about ourselves that we wanted people to know, that we held on to as the core, the kernel of our existence, it wouldn't be something physical. For most of us, we want to be known for more than just what is on the surface, more than just what's on our skin. So it's not our sex, it's not our race, it's not our gender. Those aren't the things that we want to be solely identified for most of us. The sad reality, though, I think is twofold. So part one of that is, how often are we having conversations like these where we are getting to know one another and truly going beyond the surface? And that's why I think, an initiative like this, that The Voice has started, and these types of conversations are important. This is where we get to know one another and understand one another and so on. Again, we see our differences, yes, but we also see our similarities. So, we need to have more conversations like these where we are asking people questions, where we're getting to know one another, where we are sharing and giving of ourselves. So people know, oh, okay, Andrew is, he's a good-looking chap, and he's also there are things that we can identify as similarities. John and I are going to be best of friends from now on. But the other piece that I think is sad is that the people who end up holding on to surface diversity words are often folks who are minorities. So it tends to be women, it tends to be people who are racial minorities or minoritized in some other way. And when you ask them why, it's typically because that identity shapes and colors a lot of the ways in which they experience the world. And so that I think is also unfortunate. So again, recognize that even though for you, it might be easy to say, hey, I don't want to hold on, or I don't just want to be known for what's on the surface. For some people, they truly don't think they can escape it, one. And for others, they think it's something that they need to hold on to remind others of their resilience and perseverance. So, I want to thank you. I want to wrap the exercise at this point. I'll open it up. I'll pass it back to John and open it up for any questions, comments, and other conversation. But the points I want to leave you with are this. One, identity is multifaceted. So please don't put people into one box. Don't label them as just one thing. Two, identity is fluid. We do have some choice in how we identify, but it can change, it can shift. It comes from external sources as well. Most of us want to be known for more than just what's on the surface, but recognize that for some of us, and especially for minorities, it might be difficult for us to think that society or even us, we can escape some of those surface characteristics. Thanks again for having us. Always love these conversations. Open it up to other thoughts, questions, and opinions.
First question to you, Andrew. I thought we were best friends already before this conversation even happened. But I'll let that one slide. So when you talk about surface identity, how do you relate surface identity to stereotypes?
Yeah, great question. So, stereotypes are what I would call biases, right? So stereotypes are, if I see X, then I think this is associated with X. So, I'll give an example. If I see somebody who is Black, I think they are athletic. Or if I see somebody who is Asian, I think that they are intelligent or good at math. Those are stereotypes. Because I see one thing, I believe that this other thing must also be true. And those things aren't necessarily related to one another at all, right? So all Blacks aren't athletic and all Asians aren't necessarily good at math. But those are some of the stereotypes that exist. So the thing about surface diversity and stereotypes is that we don't have control over how we appear, right? Like, I don't have a control over being Black. That's just the way I was born. And so if people pigeonhole me or stereotype me based on that, it makes my existence very, very difficult because I have to live and deal with those stereotypes every day. If somebody had a stereotype, against someone for, being caring or being resilient or anything else, if it were a deep characteristic, it's something they could hide. It's something that it didn't necessarily have to deal with all of the time. But those things that are on the surface, we don't really have a choice in presenting them. And so we always have to, let me not say have to, but we have to deal with how people might interact with us and the stereotypes that might be associated with that. So I think that's an excellent question. Often some of the surface things we don't have choice over, and that is I think the challenge.
Well, no, your surface identity and how someone, when they see you, what their first impression is oftentimes based on a person's bias, wouldn't you say?
Ask me that one more time. I just want to make sure I understand the question.
So if I'm looking at you, I may assume some surface identity of you based on stereotype or bias that I possess.
Well, I think first of all, you would perceive certain things. So for instance, if you looked at me, you would see I have darker skin. You'd see I'm good looking as well, but you'd see I have darker skin. I feel like this is going to be a running joke all night. And so that darker skin is something you perceive. So that is fact. I do have darker skin. The stereotype or the bias piece comes in when you attach value or you devalue what that darker skin means. So if you think because I have darker skin, I am more athletic, then you've attached some value to that. If you think because I have darker skin, I am not as intelligent, then you've attached value to that. So the bias is when we attach those other beliefs that are not factual or not based in fact or evidence. Perceiving that I have darker skin. So saying that, hey, Andrew, you are Black. there's no bias associated with that. I am in fact darker skinned. So it's the attachment of the value that brings in the bias.
Yeah, like for example, if I look at you and I say, man, that is a good looking man, but he's follically challenged, for example.
That would be accurate. That would be accurate.
Stop laughing, Aaron.
I think the Admiral is asking a good question. How would our perceptions change if we viewed every person as a child of God? Excellent question. I'd throw it out to the group, Admiral. I certainly have my 2 cents, but what do folks think about the Admiral's question? How would our perceptions change if we viewed every person as a child of God?
This is Colonel Hensley. I think we would be more compassionate and have more empathy for one another and treat each other with more respect.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. Others?
Well, yes. As far as if a child of God is a person who sees God's heart, not the physical seeing God's heart, but when you hear God's voice, you begin to know the countenance of God's heart, and so if it's the God that I know that the creator of the human race and loves all people, then wow, I mean we would be able to have a vision for all people, man. Not saying I'm colorblind, but appreciating all the differences, the different skills, the different talents, the different abilities, the different gifts. It would be I guess it would be an amazing place, and I kind of experienced that when I played football. I to a certain degree that I experienced that with the teams that I was on for a few years, and well, everybody knew it wasn't about them; it was about the team, and we came together and we overcame all different types of challenges. It was all kind of issues we dealt with inside the locker room, on the football field, and I mean, I could write a book about it, and the type of identity of as far as being God's child to me is the very foundation of the human race. And when we look at ourselves and one another based on that identity, there are 2 words that we all have in common, and it's I am. And you see, the I am is so crucial. I remember when I was on a bus and I asked this dude, it was 1984. I said, "Yo, man, who are you?" He said, "I am the best wide receiver in the NFL." Then he went on to say, "My name is Jerry Rice. I'm from Mississippi." Now, he didn't say I'm Jerry Rice. He didn't say I'm black, I'm African American. He said, "I am," the choice that he made. And we weren't in the NFL yet. We were still in college. The NFL draft was 4 months later. So he decided who he was before he was. And the I am part is so big because it surpasses time. There's a limitlessness. We don't just define ourselves according to some of the identities that we do, and we just stuck right there. We can't adapt. We're not aware. We just don't move right. That I am, for all of us to say I am. And I don't, and this is what I present to kids when I speak in schools. And I don't try to tell them what to put after the I am. That's none of my business. But I say, listen, say I am. Everybody goes, I am. Now what you put after the I am, that's on you. But I hope it's who you truly are. Because you need to decide your true identity. And I tell them, I go, listen, side is a suffix. It means to kill. You put some words in front of it, it tells you to kill what? Homicide means to kill somebody, suicide, kill yourself, pesticide, insecticide, kill some rodents or some insects. But when you decide who you truly are, you kill who you're not. You're not walking around on the planet, wasting time being somebody who you're not. So that decision, and I think a lot of people say it's deep, to decide the power source that you're plugged into every day. And again, the human condition, listen, we don't always plug into it. We struggle. All of us struggle there. But you can remember to do your job. You can remember to be who you are. You can remember to plug into the power source of hope, strength, kindness, respect. We can go on and on. And that's an everyday thing, because you can know who you are, but you got to be who you are every day. And that's the biggest challenge for all of us, we can know who we are. Well, are you going to be it?
Yeah, thanks, Lee. I think you said a lot of things there. One, I think, has to do with, again, that question of choice over identity. So that's one. I would agree with you. We do, to a large extent, have choice. But I also do feel, and I know a couple other persons expressed this, that, there are some forces acting on us around that. But I agree, for the most part.
Let's talk about that. The forces, that's awesome, because, again, now you can be who you are. Without struggles, without those forces, why even decide who you are?
So that leads me to the second point that I think you made, that is also a good one, which is, I think our identity has to come with action, right? So part of it is a belief that I am X or I am Y, but the second part of that comes with the action that kind of reinforces that. The third piece, I think, that you said kind of goes back, I think, to the Admiral's original question, which is, if we approach others or view others with a particular value set, then we recognize them. I think so. Admiral, correct me if this is not what you're saying, but we recognize them as equal to us, similar to us, in the same condition. And so our approach to them is one that is based much more in empathy, much more in compassion, and much more in understanding. So if that's incorrect, please let me know.
No, I think you're spot on. And I think the point, when Lee was talking about, being in the NFL, and, if everybody's a football player, then you're all in it together. And John, your point about what if you don't believe in God? Well, what do you have in common with other people? I will say it's sad if you don't believe in God, because I do think that gives you something so much deeper to tap into. But if you're not there, what is it that you have in common with people that you can say, not only am I, but so are you? And if we begin to look with lenses of, and who are you, then I think we see people differently.
Thank you for clarifying. Yeah, so absolutely agree. I think, to the Admiral's point, for me, so I define faith. It's not that I do not believe in God, but I think this is a broader definition. But I define faith as, actions rooted in good character will yield the best results, even when I cannot see how. So actions rooted in good character will yield the best results, even when I cannot see how. So if we were to all have faith, to the Admiral's point, I think then our approach to life will be one that's rooted in more caring, more compassion, more understanding. What you actually have faith in might vary from person to person. But that belief in faith, that belief in something bigger than ourselves, I think leads us to that particular approach.
If I can just add, Big Mac, if I can add to that, Mac, again, one of my points is deciding who you truly are. Because all kind of people believe in God, and I don't know sometimes I don't know what kind of God they believe in. Okay? So it's about deciding who you truly are. And that type of choice hopefully will lead to the type of actions, okay, that represent that knowledge of true identity, who you really are, and another type of term that I would use, purposeful identity. And again, there are so many ways that we can all learn a purposeful identity in our lives, and that's one of the things that I work with in my mentorships and the opportunities that I have throughout the country with all different kind of people and again, it's none of my business. I don't try to tell anybody who they are. That's their choice. But I focus on purposeful identity. And that is something that we all need to work on, and continue to journey, because identity is just not a place. It's a journey. It's a life
So,
adventure.
to Andrew's point on faith, faith is one of our pillars at Life Aid. And when I incorporated it and used that word specifically, I did it because I believe in faith, but I struggle with the religious part. And I believe that if you have a belief system, whatever it is, whether you believe God or don't believe in God, but you have your own internal belief system, you have sort of your internal compass, if you will. It always helps lean on the pack. And Admiral Kibben and I have lots and lots of conversations on this topic. And we always talk about people who have a belief system as a suicide prevention program. Those people have some type of hope or purpose. So they're not gonna. Those are not the guys that you worry about. The guys you worry about are the guys that don't have faith or don't have a belief system or don't have hope and purpose. And when people become hopeless, that's when you have to worry. And so I apply faith differently. As I always say to Admiral Kibben, I gave up organized religion a long time ago because the people who lead it always don't live up to what they're supposed to be advocating. And I know that we have several pastors on here with Pastor Jackson and Pastor Cedric and some others. We do a lot with faith, and so just know it's a struggle for me, and I try to do it, approach it in a way to make it feel welcoming for everybody, whether they believe in God or not.
Well, John, this is Lee. I would like to challenge you because, again, like I said in the beginning, that identity is a gift. It may be the greatest gift to the whole human race. So if somebody says, "Who are you, John?" If someone just come up to you off the street and say, "Who are you?" Okay, if those three words right there presented to any human being, it's a gift. It's a present. It's being presented to you. Who are you? And for you to make that decision, it can't be based on how you see people, how they deal with God. Don't get caught up in that.
I don't. I mean,
At all. That's what I'm saying. Don't do it.
I just know that as the leader of the organization, I take fire from all sides. So no matter what I do, there's people that'll be upset with that decision, or there's people that don't come to the town halls anymore because we talk too much about God, and I just like that's. I can't be all things to all people, so I have to try to be true to what I want the organization to be and represent, what everybody knows that this program's a lifeline. And they come here and they know they're going to be safe and they're going to be cared after, and they know that they can trust me, and they know that I'm going to do what I say I'm going to do. So when you say what's my identity, we talked about this when we talked about leadership a few weeks ago, and some of the guys were talking about leadership and what qualities, why they thought I was a good leader. So that was meaningful to me. Pastor Jackson, you want to say? Oh, go ahead.
I challenge people to open up the present, to decide who they are, and that's the biggest thing that we can do is challenge one another, man, to make that decision, and hopefully they make the right one for their life and others.
I have a question for everybody, by the way, and I hope I get an answer on this one. I don't know if you guys could hear me right. Okay. And my question is actually for Andrew. I hope he could answer that question. Why don't we identify ourselves as human beings first? Beside, oh, I'm black, I'm white, I'm Muslim, I'm Christian, I'm this, I'm that. And I hope, Andrew, he has an answer for that, since he's the professor.
Yeah.
The
Why
good
do we
looking,
have to keep
the good
like
looking professor.
separating ourselves and make division between each other? Why we don't agree on one thing, that we are all human beings? Look, there's no perfect human being on this earth. No one is perfect, period. But I hope he gives me an answer on that one. And everybody else, if you guys want to pitch in.
Can I just suggest an answer before Andrew jumps in? Because I think that people hide from the idea that we're human beings, because identifying as a human being means that we're accepting our own mortality.
But okay, if we don't identify ourselves as human beings, what are we?
Of course, I'm not saying that's the right way to be. I'm just saying I think that most people are not comfortable with the idea of death, the idea of mortality. And I think that if we first and foremost say that we're naked of everything else, but the fact that we're at first and foremost humans just like everyone else, then we're identifying with the most basic things of our lives, which is that we're born and eventually our lives end. And I think that things like identifying with religion, identifying with careers, identifying with the future as a concept, or caste, or ethnicity, all those things are eternal. They last longer than our lives.
You just said it. It's eternal stuff, though.
Yeah.
But in the end, we're all human beings, period.
Yeah. And I think it's a problem that we're not identifying as humans, because that separates us from...
That's my issue.
Mm-hmm.
Why
and I think
we don't identify ourselves as human beings first? That's the number one thing. And I'm not trying to make a mess right now out of it, but I hope you guys, you know what I'm saying? It's just like, it boggles my mind because look, I don't know if you guys saw the whole video, and this is the altercation that I had at first. When they start bringing the colors, I had an issue back in the days with the religion thing. That's what makes, in my personal opinion, this is my own personal perspective, that's what makes division between people. If we keep identifying ourselves, oh, this is so-and-so, he's from this country, or this is so-and-so, and he's from this religion, and it's just like, it's not making any sense to the perspective that, how I'm gonna put this. So I'm gonna put it in a simple way. When I came to this country at first, and I was probably about a year that I've been here, and 9/11 happened. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I got called names that I couldn't understand at first. You know, go back to your country, but don't you see me? I'm a normal human being. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And why we keep dividing ourselves, this is a problem that we're having, and this is what we need to fix. We have to, like, in my own personal opinion, again, we have to identify ourselves as human beings first, because that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I was brought up, like, my dad raised me as a human being. That's like, I have to basically be who I am. That's not a problem. But I have to treat people equally, because in the end, and that's what he always told me, we are all human beings. There's no one perfect on this earth. But I really want Andrew, because he kept saying, like, I want Andrew to answer this, because he said, what do you identify yourself with? It just like, I want to see what kind of mindset that we're talking about. It's either we are all human beings, or we're not. We're just, you're dark skin color, you're Christian, you are
real quick, if
whatever.
I could, just give me a second, because Admiral Kibben has to go. We're going to come back to you, Fadi, because I think that your question is pretty interesting. But I wanted to say to Reagan, Admiral Kibben is here, and I just wanted to make sure you guys got connected. And Pastor Jackson is also here, because we had this great town hall in Daphne, Alabama, that Reagan was a part of, and there's a whole story to it that we won't get into today. But I wanted to make sure before everybody disappeared that I introduced Reagan and made sure that she connected with Aaron and Andrew and everybody, and Pastor Jackson, because I know Admiral Kibben has got to tend to the family. So wanted to make sure that Pastor and Admiral Kibben got to say hi to Reagan before they had to go.
Hey, Reagan, I sent you a note on the chat. It's really great to hear from you, and I look forward to having some more discussion. And your comments today were really helpful and just showed the depth of heart that you bring to just about everything that you do. So it's great to have an opportunity to connect with you, and I know that Pastor Jackson feels the same way. So I'm really glad to be here.
Yes, ma'am. Me too. Thank you so much for those kind words. It was so great to meet you at the town hall in Daphne.
You didn't say it was great to meet me, Reagan.
I'm sorry, I didn't see you yet.
Hey, Reagan, I think your mother has my number as well as my wife's number, and feel free to reach out anytime to us to help. And thank you for being on the call today, and just thank all of everybody that's on. Some people had to get off, and it's very interesting conversations that's going on. And John, if you would yield with just a couple of minutes, I would like to say a few words. And listening to everyone, I think it all goes back to, we all have to realize, regardless of quote unquote religious or not, Muslim, Christian, whatever, we all have to realize that we have a creator. And the creator created all of us in his image and in his likeness. And throughout the biblical and even in ancient culture, you never find anyone not believing in a higher being. So to say that there is no God and no spiritual being, that's at a whole different level. That even in ancient culture, they always knew that there was a higher power. And so for us and anyone to be in 2020 and say God doesn't exist, he exists, has always existed. And I think Lee was hitting close on it when he was talking about the I am, which is the ego amin, is who God says he is, when Moses asked him who should say, meaning that he exists, has always been in existence, and will always be in existence. And I think to follow him is the answer to the problems that we are having even in society, because they're nothing new. They existed in the ancient culture, they existed throughout the Bible, and they exist even now. So the answer to it is centered around following God and his holy and divine word, the answers to the problem. He created us. Yes, we're all human. I embrace that we are all human. But then you look at the other side, that we all are different via some of the questions that was asked, our identity, and then society identifies us as being different. If someone reports anyone, call the police, the first thing they're going to ask, can you identify them? What do they look like? At first, they're going to say the first thing is probably going to be there's an African American or Caucasian, give the height, give a description of that person. But that's really not telling, that's just the external, that's just the surface. But it really doesn't say who that person truly is. But usually automatically it goes in the mind who I'm about to look for. But you really don't know the internalness of that person. So when we look at everything, I believe that the founders, I know that God created everyone, and I believe that he wants us all to exist peacefully. And so when we see everything, the division that is going on now, how is it that my brothers and sisters can be on the opposite side of one another and not put that I see you as my brother and sister and not as my enemy, regardless of your skin color, regardless of what country you're from? And then if you're not, then it gives me an opportunity to win you over to be on the same side. And I think that's the key component. is, as I stated the last time, that we really can embrace the diversities of who we are and learn from one another. But the ultimate thing is that we were all created in God's image and his likeness. So when I see you as my brothers and sisters. So hopefully and prayerfully that has helped someone, and we can embrace that. Give you a quick example. The stadium are not full right now. I think the University of Alabama, which I graduated from, holds 107,000 people. And probably 60% or 70% when the stadium is full is probably rooting. But when they go in, they are rooting because they are all for the 70 or 80% are all for Alabama. Doesn't matter what skin color you are, where you're from, your educational background. They see you as, hey, we're all on the same team because we're for the same team. And so if you were to take that same approach and say, you know what, we're all humans, or we're all Americans, and we are all on the same team, and we shouldn't let anything separate us or divide us because of our different affiliations. And it's sad to see what is going on in this country right now, that I'm pretty sure it's some, and I know we're not political, but I'll say it this way, it's some people that are on one side and people on the other side, but then on Sunday they go to church, but when they come to the office, they got to separate. I have a hard time understanding that they can't get together to discuss issues. And that's pretty much where we are in this society, in this culture and country that we're living in. But I believe if we keep having conversations like we're having, the difficult, challenging conversations, that we can all learn from one another
Hey,
on
thanks,
how to
Pastor
approach it
Jackson.
and how to
And
make
just
it better.
know that
Thank
if
you
it
very
wasn't for
much.
Reagan Coleman, you, I, and Admiral Kibben wouldn't have never got together. So Reagan, you can always take good comfort in that.
Thank you, I do.
Yes, go
Should I
ahead, and then we're
respond now
gonna.
or no?
Paco just joined, and so we're gonna check in on him right after you go. Go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, sure. So I think you asked an excellent question, Hattie. Fadi, sorry. My thoughts on it are this. One, I don't think it's mutually exclusive. So I don't think if I accept that I'm part of the human race, and I do, and we are similar because we are, that it means that there aren't other identities that I hold that make us different. So, again, going back to one of the things in the activity, I truly believe that diversity is a two-sided coin. There are ways in which we're similar, ways in which we're different. And genetically, we are 99.5% similar. So we are all part of the human race, but there are ways in which we're different. So again, I don't think they're mutually exclusive. So that's one. The second thing is, our identities give us pride. The things that we believe of ourselves and we're proud of, etc. And so, I don't think there's anything wrong with somebody saying, hey, I'm an athlete or I am whatever else that might separate us or distinguish us from others, but, simultaneously gives us pride. So that's the second piece. And the third piece for me is this, unfortunately, I think what you're describing, Fadi, is a very ideal way of approaching the world. And I hope one day we all get there as a society. But the reality is that historically, we have not viewed and treated one another as just members of the human race. The different ways in which people can be separated, whether it be religion or skin color or gender, whatever else, have been used to divide the world and societies. And so it is difficult sometimes, I think, for some folks to move past what has happened historically and simply accept that we can move forward at this point. I think ideally we need to get there, but I think it's a work in progress and something that we're working towards.
I got your point, but the thing is that we have to get, I guess I will leave it at that. I guess we'll leave it at that.
I want to introduce Paco. Well, a lot of you guys know Paco from the different town halls, and it was actually Paco who connected me to George Floyd that was part of getting this whole situation kicked off. Paco had surgery today on his ear, and I've been texting him and his wife. I was hoping he was going to be okay to just come on today so we can all say hi to him and wish him a speedy recovery. So Paco, I don't know if I'm sure you can hear us, but we're all pulling for you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Luckily, I had to stay in. It went well. It didn't hit a nerve. I'm missing part of my
Is that
ear,
good or
but
bad?
it's so good. I can hear again, so that's the good part. I can hear again. Probably bad on some parts because I was enjoying not hearing certain people, but I'm in good spirits.
That's
And my
awesome.
balance is kind of better, I think.
That's awesome. And Andrew said that.
So
I'm
great to hear.
I'm not gonna stay on long because I'm on pain med and I still have the stuff that they had in me earlier. But thank y'all for y'all
Absolutely. And I was
prayers
going to
and
say,
support,
when you
and
get a
y'all
little
keep
older,
driving
you'll hopefully
on.
be as good looking as Andrew. Yeah, we're going to do it on Thursday,
Did
so
she
we'll get back to
do the
you.
information about the hotel for California?
We
Okay. All right. I'm lay down because
What are you
I took
doing, Lee?
some pain medicine.
Well, good to see you, Paco.
Good to see y'all too.
It's the jaws size. I'm just, since I'm getting old, I'm like 60. I have this little mouthpiece in just to keep my square jaw going.
I
Just
thought
to
that was
keep my
some penance
flexibility.
for having to root for Cleveland or something. That's because there's
At
no
least I
hope
didn't
for
say
you.
I'm trying to be good looking like everybody else is talking about. I didn't say that. Oh, okay.
After all, you are 60.
That's right. And I'm still going strong.
Hey, I'm 60 and I'm good looking. This is the Colonel.
Hey, before you got to
Hey,
run,
Colonel.
Reagan, Clyde
All
just
right,
joined.
brother.
So Clyde,
Hey, Lee.
I just wanted to say hi and welcome you. Glad you were able to join us even for a few minutes to say hi. Reagan Coleman was nice enough to join us today. Yeah.
All right. Can you hear me? How? Yeah. All right. All right. Yeah. I'm sorry, late. I was late working, and then when I got home, my wife was getting the generator started. We just bought, so it wouldn't been right for me to get on a call when I have my wife out there working on the generator. So it's good. I'm glad. Reagan, I'm glad you were able to join us today.
Me too. I'm so
Yeah,
excited. So glad I
every
got to
Tuesday,
listen in. It was a
same bat
amazing
time,
town
same
hall.
bat channel.
Great. Again, I'm sorry.
Not yet. I have an idea.
What's going to be the topic for next
Um,
Tuesday? Do you know?
and then we're going to go on. And then I know that on November 3rd, we're going to get back together with Andrew, and we're going to talk about empathy, and we're going to have a discussion with some NFL guys and the vets about the flag and kneeling during the national anthem. So I'm sure that will be a fairly spirited discussion. That'll be a can't miss episode for
It's
sure.
gonna be a mess.
That'll be on November the 3rd.
Yeah, it's
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'll put you on the invite list. But
And you said it was. You said
we
November
do them
3rd.
every week. We
Okay.
have different topics, and we try to, depending on current events and what's going on in the world, we come up with topics and try to make it interesting.
Okay.
You know that's election day, right? November 3rd. So I don't know.
It is election day,
I
isn't
know
it?
I'll be at working the polls
Aaron,
that day, so
what
that
do you
might
think
be a
about
rough
what do
day
you think
for.
about moving up a week and
Yeah,
doing it on
yeah,
the
it is.
27th instead?
Yeah. Um, I know we also are planning the event on the 10th, which we were talking about doing empathy around. Yeah, let's definitely talk about that with empathy. But for the group, we'll also be part of the December 1st town hall. So Rise will planning to be part of that November 3rd, but potentially bumping
we
it
should
for
move
election
that,
day and
'cause,
also joining you
election
guys
day, a
on
lot of
December
people are going to be
1st.
wrapped around
But yeah, John, let's talk about that.
wrapped around the axle pretty tight, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of our team is planning
There
on
you go,
volunteering
Reagan.
as poll workers too,
Just
myself
like that.
included. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Let's shift that.
That's how we roll here. Anybody else have anything? It's top of the hour. Fadi, we're really grateful to see you still alive and kicking there in Louisville. Glad you're doing well. Still looking like the picture of health, and we're grateful to have you part of our family. That's for sure.
I appreciate you, buddy.
No, it's great. I know we had a
I
bunch of
appreciate you,
kids
buddy.
join in. We didn't get to everybody, but thank you guys again for the cadets for joining in. Sergeant Mahika and everybody at the command, thank you guys again for joining us. And Dennis Fitzpatrick, you don't say much, but glad that you made it again. I think Pastor Cedric had to go, so he didn't get to say too much today. But we're grateful to have him, and he's going to get more involved with us, especially with our event in November in LA. So glad to have him. Anybody else have anything they want to add to Andrew's topic, or anything else you want to speak about?
I just thought
Yes,
that
it
Andrew
was
did a great
excellent.
job. It was
Andrew
a great
has
topic,
done
and
a
it was
fantastic
very
job as
beneficial to
always.
our cadets.
We're going to have to give him a map to those college bars so he can go have something after. Take her with you.
one of my identities is
Well
husband,
earned.
so you'll need
Well
to clear
earned.
that with my wife. But thank you all. Appreciate the feedback, though. Like I said at the top, I just think more conversations like these are valuable and important. Thank you, John, for leading this initiative. Thanks everyone for their feedback, their comments, the conversation, because without that conversation, we aren't able to move forward. So I appreciate it. Have a good rest of your night. Stay safe, and hope to see you all again. In November. I know we talked about the November 10th event for sure.
We'll see you
And
next
we'll also
on
be
October
a part of the
27th.
event on the